social status is the heart of street culture, right? Like social status is a kid, is in you've caught your stride, right? Maniere is you've reached a level of maturity. And when you're young, you dabble, right? Like you slide into the experience, but it's about being young, is about living the lived youthful experience.
Welcome to another episode of the SoleSavy Podcast. My name is Marco Henry Negrete, and today I am joined by one of the go-to hit makers in the sneaker industry right now, and the owner and founder of the Whitaker group, getting all set for a big collaboration coming up here this month, and we're going to talk about it. James, thanks for joining us.
Man, thank you for having me, Marco. I appreciate you, man. And them kind words, man. You got me over here blushing like I'm a 12-year-old girl.
Yeah, well, we were just talking about it off camera, and I feel like it might be good to start. We were just reminiscing about the last time you and I spoke about collabs was 2018, 2019 era.
I was 2017.
Yep. So it's been, for me as someone that got to see some of that from behind the scenes, and then now as a consumer to see the evolution has just been incredible, man. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today, but we have to start with one thing, and I need to know, why the Penny One and why now?
OG, man, classics. Everyone thinks about the journey of sneakers. We don't give enough credit to what basketball meant to sneaker culture. Like we just focus in on Jordan and those 14 models, but we don't really focus in on everything that was. And we don't always pay the respect it deserves. The Penny One was we wanted to just pay homage to a classic.
Definitely. And was Penny involved in this project at all?
His involvement and our salute to him was making sure that we showed love to the OG. We have been speaking with him and got his sign off, but not in the design portion. I mean, for us, we kept the original intent in mind. And if you've seen both colors, they both feel like they're from 95. The OG is OG inspired, obviously, with its connections to us and the Recess story. The other color is just speaks to everything that is a Penny One, right? It just feels like it's from 95. That was the goal.
Yeah, I appreciate that you put your spin on the shoe, but in a way where it still kind of pays homage to the original design, because the Penny One is a shoe that hasn't gotten a lot of releases from a retro standpoint. I think the last one was in 2017. There's a few on the dock for this year, but again, it is one that's a lot of consumers might be getting introduced to for the first time. So I do appreciate that it has some of that OG essence to it. And from all the research that I can gather, it's the first ever collab on the Penny One that I can think of. So that's got to be a big cosign coming from the man himself.
Yeah, man, it was important for us to not just go back to the things and touch the things that people touch, right? Like no one's really gave Penny his flowers. So I felt like Penny is rooted in our culture, mainly through Foamposite. But Penny One, Penny Two, Foamposite, the whole Penny franchise is just incredible. So I think it was important to just shed a light on some of the crazy work that this in the Nike catalog around basketball and retro basketball.
Yeah, man, 100%. And it's also great to see Penny starting to get more recognition now that he's a coach. And it's cool that we've gone to the point in sneaker culture and basketball culture where the guy who was making the fly shoes during his career is now coaching at a high level, and who knows what he's going to be wearing on the sidelines. I've seen him in Off-Whites, I've seen him in Penny Retros, and hopefully we see him in the Social Status collab.
And man, listen, and you got to realize that man's from Memphis. He's repping where he's from, so it's went full circle, and that's something that even connected me a bit more, man. He's a real one. He come from similar circumstances to myself, and Memphis is a very similar city to Pittsburgh. It's a town that, it's a tough city to make it from. So for you to make it from Memphis and go back to help build Memphis up, man, that means a whole lot to me, especially where I'm from.
Definitely salute to Penny. Moving on to the shoes here. I love the continuation between the storytelling from last summer's, free lunch film to the Recess one now. As a designer, as a creative, how do you and your team approach this type of design? Do you have the story in your mind of what you want to tell?
It's the story. It's for us. It's about our relationship with the kid. The difference between Maniere and social status is about experience, right? Social status has a much younger voice, and we're talking from the perspective of that kid. Maniere, man and woman, is much older and much more established and able to participate in the experience. Maniere obviously still connects to the youth culture, but social status is youth culture. So it's the voice of youth culture. So when we're telling the story, it's usually through the lens of kids. So we knew long before we decided on the model what we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, and I love how you've been able to connect that to different generations, even talking about some of the alma Maniere pairs that are very specific to storytelling about women or different direct target audiences, but you still see people from all walks of life wanting to get those shoes, wanting to wear them. The same with the social status. It's a great description on how that is youth culture, but you still see people well into their 30s and 40s still wanting that shoe because I think it reminds them of that nostalgic feeling. Was that story inspired by experiences that you or people on your team directly had as far as like the basketball kid in the summer coming of age story?
Absolutely. All the stories we tell, I think, have a level of uniqueness to all of us. And if you think about the connection to the shoe, people looked at the shoe in images. They seen the swoosh, the swoosh, removable swooshes, and this is in connection to sport and moments, right? For us, it's basketball, but when you go into recess, remember the netted bag you come in would have all the different balls, baseball, basketball, tennis ball. It's thinking about these swooshes come in a little bag. It connects to Air Max Penny 1 to social status in the recess story. So for us, it was about the nostalgic moments that you live as a kid, right? And just life growing up through the lens of those kids in their journey growing up in the project. So it isn't just my story. I think I'm telling our stories.
I saw the rollout. The film was incredible. And in my head, I'm thinking, wow, they had this entire press kit that was well put together. And they didn't talk that much about the colorway or the design of the shoe. And I realized that's probably intentional. The story is the shoe, the colorway and the materials and that stuff are kind of a reflection of that story. But can you walk me through the actual colors and the materials of the shoes and maybe what inspired those?
Yes. So the black colorway is just paying homage to the OG in a classic, right? And it's saying like, hey, listen, respect the classics. Like this is something that you hear people say like, oh, the Penny 1 at the time in 1995 was one of the most important shoes in the market, right? And obviously you got a Jordan 1 in the background. MJ's the GOAT. Let's not mistake that, right? But there were other athletes and moments around Nike basketball that Jordan Brand kind of haloed and connected with. And Penny was one of the guys, right? Like, remember when Jordan came back, Shaq and Penny beat MJ. Now, MJ came back and was MJ the next year around, and we MJ went from 45 to 23. But Shaq and Penny was one of the first 1-2 combos of our generation that we got a chance to see. And this shoe represents that.
MJ rarely wore other people's shoes. It's hard to when you have the best signature line of all time, but there are those photos of him wearing one of the pennies. And that, to me, to think about that at that point in his career, at the top of his game, he still saw this young gun coming in and say, yo, like, I respect this dude enough. But it's so rare to see MJ wearing someone else's shoe.
Penny was a point that played the combo at that time, the way he played with Shaq on the squad. Think about that. Like, yo, and then think about the moment in Little Penny and the connection to culture. And then, so what we wanted to do was take that, right? And everything that it was, but connect it, put it in his rightful place, which was how it was experienced in our culture. We had lived experiences in Penny, right? Sneakers connect to people because there's lived experiences in the sneakers. We wanted to social status Penny 1 to be part of the lived experience for the recess episode. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So in connecting it to the story, it wasn't about over materializing the shoe. It was just about representing the shoe well in a homage to OG, and then giving the world a colorway that connects to 1995 without over materializing it, but just letting it live as a part of the story, right? Hence the removable swoosh that pays homage to recess and all the balls, volleyball, basketball, baseball, dodgeball. All those balls are the materials of those removable swooshes. They're not to be worn on the shoe per se, but it's to help dig and tell the story.
One thing that you touched on earlier, but I'm curious to know more about is how do you balance telling these stories that obviously have an overlap to them between the Alma Maniere brand and the social status brand, but also making sure like, they are speaking to different audiences, even though there is overlap. How do you balance that as a creative?
Well, Social Status is going to always be young and fun. Maniere is going to challenge the world to be different. I seen a quote yesterday that said, "Activism is the rent I pay for living on Earth." Our goal with Maniere is to be a change agent that helps change people's belief system, right, and challenge their belief system, and pushes people to be courageous and bold and to do more. Social Status is to connect with the kid and have fun with them and help the world understand where they are, because that kid becomes that adult, and the responsibility that you have once you make it from the place where you were growing up in the projects to where you get to a place where you can experience Maniere, there's a greater responsibility. Hence the quote, right? Activism is the rent that I pay for living on Earth, right? Like there's a lot of responsibility to, I've been given a lot coming from where I'm from, right? Like most people don't make it out. Now that I am, Social Status allows us to tell the story and how fun it was while we were on the journey and making it out. Like, you know, like they say in the narration of the episodes, everything ain't bad in the hood, right? But if you look at Maniere voice, we making you change the hood.
I did appreciate how you broke down each character in the film and explained to them the different sides of how they're perceived. Like you just mentioned, not everything is bad, and I remember the specific scene. We were taught to stay away from people like OG Hustle, but the truth is he looks out for us. So I thought that was a nice way to connect all the characters and say that they're all in it together in a certain way when it comes to community.
There's things written about ghettos, and you don't make it out. Everybody there aren't bad, and people become their circumstances, and people don't prey on other people. I think everybody wants to see people meaningfully make it out. When we talk about systemic equality, when we talk about systemic inequalities, that's the inability to make it out against you trying as hard as you know how to try, right? I think everybody want the best for everybody, right? But when there's no other way, that's when you just try to go within your surroundings to make a way, right? And what you see with the character G Hustle, a lot of people get judged for trying to make a way. And, I think someone like G Hustle tries to do more inspiring than he does tearing people down. But I think that's another conversation.
Speaking of inspiring, and again, the idea of community, it's been amazing to see almost every major brand in the world in recent years start to make that more of a priority, including the Nikes and the Jordan brands in the world. And I have to imagine that them being aligned with you was the encouragement, or at least the perfect example to try to follow, since you've been doing this for a really long time, connecting the worlds of what you do for business and what who it is you're trying to serve. I always think back to the Charlotte All-Star, where it was kind of a coming out party for Social Status to the world, taking the world and I guess the sneaker hype cycle to Charlotte, showing them what you guys are all about, but also all of the community initiatives that happened that day. And then you can't forget about that classic photo of MJ and you in the store. It felt so organic to me, but also so significant at the same time. Do you see that weekend, that All-Star weekend, as kind of a significant milestone for you guys?
I think what it was acknowledgement, right? The work had, like, to your point, been happening for years. I think that was 2019. So 2019, we'd already been at it for 15 years, yep. Right? It's easy. Like, you hear somebody's first single on their first album and you think like, oh, wow, they must've just started. Like, no, it's just the first time they got an opportunity to show the world what they can do. Right. And I think in that all-star moment, it was when the world ultimately realized that you didn't need to be in New York, LA, or London to have a point of view, and that life exists in a lot of places. And I would even argue that more meaningful life exists in some of the places we are, because we don't always have the resources that some of those places have. So I think they got a chance. I think some of the bigger brands, specifically Nike, got a chance to see who we were on a ground level and see, what we made of. I think at that time we'd already had a pretty good relationship with MJ. So it was still crazy exciting for him to come through in that moment, to let the world know how he supported us.
Yeah, speaking of that moment, we talked briefly earlier about the Air Jordan 6 that you designed that released exclusively there. To see that evolve since you started to now, where the retailers are not just contributing, they're leading the conversation, they're designing the shoes, they're telling the stories. How has that evolution been from your perspective since you started, just maybe having an account, having to get an account, and then having to push that product yourself and storytell, versus now you guys are really leading the charge for these stories, for these seasons, for these silhouettes?
Well, we grew up. You used the Air Jordan 6 as an example. Like that was one that we didn't control design on that shoe. It was something that we retailed because of All-Star, but very different than any of the Maniere projects that's dropping, or even Protomax 720 that's behind you that we did with Jordan Brand. Those shoes we had a point of view on, and we got a chance to call things. Like obviously we talked to Frank some about what we wanted to do with that 6 at the time, but Frank would tell you what we wanted and what dropped is very different, right? But I think what's happened since then is we've grown up, and I think there's been a bit of acknowledgement that we're big boys and we have a point of view, and we have an authentic connection to the world. And I can only speak for our team. Like we've been in the streets, like we come from it, right? Like I am a part of. I can connect with the kid because I was the kid, right? And I think our benefit. I say all the time, my curse growing up how we grew up, where we was from. Like you would think, like who the hell wants this, right? But that connection to the world has helped me now be able to tell our stories and connect the product in a way that I may not have been able to if I didn't grow up where I grew up at, right? So now we're able to uniquely express ourselves through our voice via storytelling and through our eye via product, and bring it all together and with the help and support of Nike Inc. and Jordan Brand, and we're able to tell our stories to the world.
Speaking of to the world, how powerful it is it for you to see the stories that you're talking about your particular experiences and those around you? And then like we were just talking about being somewhere like Paris Fashion Week a couple of weeks ago. When you see your shoe that's inspired by your perspective and your experiences being sought after and coveted and worn across the world, what is that feeling like?
You know what? When I played ball, I didn't read the clippings until I graduated, and I was not playing ball no more. I'm always like, our team always pushes me to acknowledge. My man Nico always says it. Like you got to acknowledge what's happening now, in order to continue to push. But it's so tough for me to acknowledge it because it's such a journey and a fight to be able to work long term, meaningfully. Like right, like you said earlier, a lot more people were talking about systemic inequalities and some of the issues that we deal with as Black and brown folks. But some of it's fad, right? Some of it ain't real. Some of it's a farce. I would say today, I exist, and that's a step forward, right? We exist, and we have the ability to tell our stories. And I think there's other people that's managed to get out and take a step forward. But when I look behind me, I'm still seeing the same issues that I've seen for the last 400 years. So it's tough for me. It's tough for me to celebrate where I am, because that's singular. It's a whole lot of us behind me that still need to get forward.
Yeah, definitely. And when it does come to that, and it comes to the products and how they're received throughout your communities and beyond, is there a pressure to continue this? Because again, like we mentioned earlier in the intro, there's no question that the Whitaker group and yourself leading the charge has become one of the go-to hit makers. Do you feel pressure that you have to continue to launch hits like this, or does that pressure come from, like you mentioned earlier, within? It's
more about the pressure from within, because there's a burden to bring everybody forward. The product is fuel to rev up the engine, right? I don't often worry about the product. I'm more worried about the results. If we can't get everybody a fair shot, that's when I'm worried, right? So I think when we sit down, we're always saying like, yo, I got X amount of years left living, right? Nothing's wrong with me. I think about the holistic plan and my time and what we can do in our time and what we've seen happen. We've seen Supreme work for 20 years. We've seen Undefeated work for 20 years. And some of these brands have been working for so long. So for me, I'm looking at the long-term vision and what it is that we're trying to accomplish. So I don't feel no pressure from one shoe or one launch. It's more about what can we change in 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 years. And how does it look like for the people behind me? And do they have the ability to work and continue to fight to change things and make things better? And if we can solve for this, what other things can we solve for in the process?
It seems like building that sort of long-term plan and planning for that longevity in here directly ties to making your consumers happy and giving them a fair shot at getting the shoes, which I can't think of another retailer, especially high profile, that puts such an emphasis on the people who those shoes were designed for, getting them fairly, whether it's the local raffles, the Discord raffles, the women getting some of the silhouettes first. It seems like you guys take that very serious. That tells me two things. One, of course, you're invested in the people that support you. And two, you have a very keen eye to how the sneaker industry works today, right? The demand is so high, and it's not all the time that the demand is that high because people want to genuinely wear them. There's obviously alternative motives there. But why does that matter so much to you? Because you could sell at every release, but why does it matter that the people that you design those shoes for get them as directly as possible?
It's simple, because they're shoes and they should be on feet, right? Like the idea of shoes as an investment vehicle, I get it, right? And if the person if the individual gets the shoe, decides to sell it, that's on them, right? But our goal is to create product to be worn, right? And to give people a fair shot, a fair chance to get it. And even if they want to sell it, that's cool. As long as everybody has a fair chance to get a pair, our goal is to avoid the picture. I tell our team all the time, I never want to see a picture with 10 shoes on the picture. Somebody going to get us for 2, 3, maybe, right? Because you can get your cousin to get a pair, your aunt, your mom, they all get you a pair. They all come to the raffle, get a pair. That's possible. But I always want to avoid the image of seeing somebody get 10 or 12 pairs, because you just want to be respectful to the process, right? In my voice on one side, I can't be saying like, yo, parity and equality. And on the other side, giving 100 pairs of shoes to, you know what I'm saying?
No, that makes a lot of sense. And speaking of finding and discovering new ways to reach your audience, I noticed that you guys have a Discord, and you've had it for a while, where you give special access to that type of consumer. SoleSavy is an online community as well. How has the rise of these kind of online communities and communication tools changed how you view the consumer journey?
Man, you have to. The future is now, right? So we're constantly, if you're thinking about the world 20 years now, and the state that the world is in, what are the vehicles that help get you there, right? And the Discord is a way for kids to communicate with themselves, a way to communicate with one another, and you got to lean in, right? And the only way, to me, some people are research. We just jump in. So we just wanted to jump in and make sure that we had a voice, and our voice was being heard, and we was connecting with the kid who has a voice, and just trying to do our best to not just serve them things, but be there to help and support them where they are, and to learn along the way.
To wrap things up, the Recess film is labeled as a part 2. There's the obvious connection between the free lunch one. Can we expect anything down the line that continues the storyline?
Yes, you could definitely expect more episodes. It's fun to be on this journey. It's fun to see, anytime you put art in the world, there's a bit of nervousness, right? Like shout out to the Turner brothers and Lou G and all the kids who play the characters in our episodes. But it's incredible to be on a ride, man. I personally enjoy putting it out to the world and helping the world see what happens in the day in the life of. So you can definitely count on seeing more of it.
Man, looking forward to it, and I appreciate your time. I'm really excited about this penny drop. I think the highest compliment you can give somebody who's putting out shoes is that people love and covet those shoes. They display them, but they also wear them. And I see the Alma Mater 3, the 1, and I can't remember the last time I saw mid dunks being rocked so regularly and so proudly. And it just seems like the shoes you guys release are what I like to call like wearable grails. Like mostly you think of a grail in a case and you don't touch it. These shoes are grails to people, but they're not too special to wear on feet and to post their outfits. We see them, the dunks especially, so much in the SoleSavy community and the "What did you wear today" thread, because people are so proud they were able to get a shoe so hyped up and they actually wear it. So I'm excited to see more people wearing the Penny one starting this summer as well.
No, thank you so much, man. The last thing I'll add is we like the shoe to mean something, right? Like it's one thing to have something to trade. It's another thing to have pride in wearing it, and hopefully it connects to what people people stand for, what they want to represent. So it's a privilege, man. We just privileged to be able to do the work.